I'm Queen City News Chief Business Correspondent Taylor Young, and you are watching Side Hustle, a show dedicated to learning about all the cool, interesting ways that people are making extra money. And when you think of TV shows and movies, your first thought might not be that this could be a side hustle, but not every shot involves a lead actor, and sometimes it takes a lot of people to fill the background of scenes. So that's why today we are talking about making a little extra as an extra. And this week, we're going to bring in our guest, Tom Raleigh. Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Jayla.
So we were just kind of showing a clip of a trailer for Righteous Gemstones, and that is a series that you have actually been in as an extra. And before we even kind of get into what your experience is like on set, walk us through kind of how you got into doing this work. Is it something that you were always kind of drawn into?
Initially, I was just curious about the movie business in general and the mechanics of it, how they were made. I had transferred, or I had moved down to Charleston, South Carolina after retiring, and I was footloose and fancy free, if you will. And one day I tripped over a post on Facebook through a casting agency, and I thought, well, here we go. Here's my opening door. And through Tona Dahlquist casting, I simply submitted my name, and they asked for brief biographical background, a headshot, a full standing shot, any experience you might have had. That was my initial startup, and pretty soon, as I see a couple of clips you're showing there, I was fortunate enough to be in a few courtroom scenes of Mr. Mercedes, and that was a kickoff to my extra career.
Yeah. And you essentially kind of landed your first gig, I guess it sounds like right
Um,
off the bat.
that was I was pretty lucky to do that. It wasn't a featured extra, if you will, but just the fact that I was there out of curiosity, and to see yourself a year or two later on TV is kind of fun.
I bet. So you mentioned Righteous Gemstones. Let's kind of go through the impressive list of kind of all the shows and movies that you've been a part to. Righteous Gemstones, Mr. Mercedes, which is a drama series based on a Stephen King's novel,
Right.
The Hunting Wives, and then an upcoming movie kind of featuring a famous boxer, Christy Martin, who's starring Sydney Sweeney and was partially shot right here in Charlotte. I feel
It
like you're
was.
probably a man at the parties that everyone kind of wants to come and talk to and ask about this experience. How do you explain to people what this gig is like?
Well, it's funny that you ask. It's an awkward situation. You try to remain humble, of course. Not that this is any great feature role or anything, but it's fun and everybody's curious, just like you are. Uh, how you get started in this? Generally, everybody asks how it happened. Just got your foot in the door. Um, I consider myself pretty lucky, I guess. And having only done a relatively few extra stints at this point, um, I have been lucky in getting a little bit of notoriety.
Yeah, and from our previous conversation, it sounds like every kind of job that you do or any kind of set that you're on, it's very different. Kind of walk me through the process of what an average day would be like as an extra on a set.
Well, the very first requirement is you have to be prepared to wait. You have to be patient. There is a lot of downtime. That was probably my biggest surprise. I have in the past in my professional career, I had an opportunity to take part in a couple of training films for the corporation, and that was sort of my introduction to production techniques. And I learned right away that's hurry up and wait. You'll get 30 seconds of a shot oftentimes takes hours and hours and hours for any number of different reasons. That's number one. Number two is, and you learn this pretty quickly, um, while you might be tempted to talk with the crew, the cameraman, the production assistants, anybody, it's best just to smile and nod and stay out of everybody's way. Um, there are many people involved in the entire process that are always taking notes, seemingly, not literally on paper, but they're very alert. They watch. Time is money
Hmm.
in this business. The next thing that becomes really apparent just after a few hours is you begin to understand why productions are so expensive. It takes a lot of people for a relatively small content that you ultimately see on the screen.
Has this kind of changed the way that you watch movies or television shows now that you have been kind of a part of this process? Are you kind of looking at the extras a little differently?
That's an excellent question. Um, I can only speak for myself, of course. I view everything I watch now differently, having the experience of seeing the background, and the techniques and the methodology to everything. I find myself doing a very amateurish um, um, critique, if you will. It's truly interesting.
Okay, so and I know sometimes kind of going back to how many hours you're on set, sometimes you from our previous conversation, you could be on set for hours and hours, maybe days worth, but that scene might not even make the final cut. What is that like?
That's absolutely true. As I shared with you in the previous conversations, um, I'll use Righteous Gemstones as an example. I was again fortunate enough to be asked to be in the Gemstones choir, and they placed. And there were about 100 people on either side of the stage. Um, they had me pretty much, well, definitely in the front row, and there were a number of shots that came our way. Um, the scene itself, one particular scene, took maybe 30 seconds on the actual viewing. It took 15 hours, 15 and a half hours to achieve that 30 seconds of song and dance, if you will. We had a little script. We didn't have a dance step, but we had kind of a swaying back and forth. There was choreography involved. Um, a lot of us didn't know our left foot from our right foot.
So you have to be prepared for really anything to be thrown at you.
Pretty much you do.
Yeah.
If you're cast, quote unquote, in a spot that or that they tell you in advance, you're going to be on camera in this. We're going to be focusing on this group of people. Then you're on the mark, and they kind of hold you to task.
Yeah. And I understand that, there has been times where maybe the scene that you were in, it didn't make the cut, but there has been times where you have been pretty close to being up front and center with the main actors.
Certainly a very, very, again, another fortunate moment.
Yeah, the
With,
courthouse scene is kind of really sticking out to me.
yeah, I think I stood out there more so because that particular scene in the courtroom was, the setting of the scene was, or the whole moment was, it was winter time in a courtroom in Ohio. And here I come traipsing in with a deep Carolina tan, and I thought for all the world, there's no way in the world they're going to let me sit in a spot, and uh, and it was kind of fun when it showed up on the big screen.
Well, on that note, we are going to take a really quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Side Hustle. So, Tom, we were just talking about what it was like with your experience on set. So, after everything is shot and kind of wrapped up, eventually this is going to air. What is it like when you kind of find out, okay, this is airing on this specific date? Do you have a watch party? How do you go about that?
Um, Most of the time, in my experience, my brief experience, you're not made aware of exactly when anything is going to
Mm-hmm.
be shown. Each of the productions that I've been involved with some have given notice, some haven't. I'll refer to The Hunting Wives. I did that about over a year and a half ago. And only recently, I became aware that it was just a production intended to go on Stars, and now it was bought by Netflix and appearing July 21st, which is certainly looking forward to. But up until that announcement just the other day, I had no idea when it was going to air. I haven't heard anything about Apopka. That's a future release. And The Righteous Gemstones, once the season started, of course, you knew every Monday night or Sunday night, whatever it was, what you were about to see.
Yeah. And were you tuning in for them?
Of course.
So let's kind of go back a little bit to how you kind of land these gigs. I understand that there are casting call groups on social media that can post upcoming gigs, but you have also kind of gotten to the point where you might get a phone call personally asking you to come. Talk about that.
From the casting agency, Tony Dahlquist is the only one I've been associated with so far. Obviously, they compile a database of 75-year-old males, 16-year-old, and what have you, and all of your stats. From that, the director occasionally, and again, in my brief experience, the director occasionally says, I need a 40-year-old woman or a 75-year-old man. A few times I was contacted directly after building a small resume by the casting agency through text or a phone call. Actually, I was on my way home from Asheville one afternoon and got a call from Tony Dahlquist and saying that the director wanted the agency to compile a list of about 10 75-year-old males for a particular role, and asked if I wanted my name thrown in the hat. And I said, yeah, please, absolutely. That was a production in Charlotte, and I reminded them that I live in Charleston, South Carolina, but I can travel if needed. So I was pretty surprised when they selected me just on pure logistics, because they termed it a featured role, featured extra, not a featured role. I got to be careful there. A featured extra. So you had to make a firm commitment that whenever needed, you'd be able to be there. You'd have a dance notice, of course, but I had to give that assurance. And interesting thing, part two of this is basically you have to sign or agree to, in that kind of a spot, an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. They don't want anything going out to the public before they start doing their promotions of it. They don't want any pictures going out before approval, if you will. I kind of want there, but I'll get that to you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I know, for any side hustle that we talk about on this show, money is always involved. So talk about that. How do you get paid for being an extra? And is it a lot? Kind of put it into context.
Sure. The pay scale initially that I experienced was probably in the $12 to $15 an hour range. Everything pays you a minimum of 8 hours. After 8 hours, they allow for overtime, time and a half, and everybody's familiar with. There are some time constraints apparently related to the production crews, and you can't work more than 15 and three quarter hours a day. And I have been on set at least half a dozen times now in different productions where I have worked very, very, very long days. The pay process everybody signs into immediately, and uh, it's thorough, but it's prompt, and you get paid. I'll say within days or a week of any given single day that you work. If you work 4 or 5 days in a row, of course, you don't get 4 or 5 checks. You get one lump check at the end of time. They're very efficient in that manner, very professional. As I say, pay scale seems to average around the 12 to 14, $15 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
If you happen to be lucky, like I was with one or two spots, you get featured extra pay, a little bit more.
Yeah. And do you do this for the money, or do you do this? I don't know. I know you're retired. Uh, you love movies. You love the movie process. What was kind of the reason that got you into doing this?
Pure curiosity. I wanted to learn the process. I thought it would be intriguing. I was lucky, a word I seem to be using a lot today, but I was truly lucky. Over 50 years ago, gives me a little pause when I say that. Holy cow! I was in a national commercial, couple of national commercials, and for the same product, and the money that I made at the time for a very, very, very small work was very nice.
Yeah.
I even had a script, my one word script. I won't say the product on the air because it's still out there today. But it was it was fun, and that's what made it
Can you say
intriguing.
what your line was?
My line, I had to study long and hard for this, and I was on the spot, and I was leaning on the side of a Corvette, and a very pretty girl next to me. And over the director's shoulder, I got my cue, and I looked right into the camera, and I went, Delco.
Nailed it. You still got it. Okay, so fast forward to today. You don't necessarily do this for the money, but this can be a really successful side hustle or potentially career. Could extra work be a career for someone?
If you really put your mind to it, I think you could. And I started to meet a few people along the way that, while maybe not making a career of it, did it pretty often. And they would, one fellow in particular lives in Florida. He would go to Atlanta, and he recommended to me, if I want to do any more, go to Atlanta. They have a lot of movie production and TV production out of there, with a couple of very active casting agencies. There's another area up in Wilmington, North Carolina. Uh, Most people know of that through Outer Banks.
Mm-hmm.
I have met people that have done it. I would recommend, sitting here at the ripe old age of 75, if you're going to do it when you're younger. Don't do it when you're older, but you can. You can put some money in your pocket.
And they also
Don't.
need 75-year-old extras too.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I'm filling a slot.
All right, we're going to take one more quick break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Side Hustle. Tom, we've covered a lot of ground here. Do you have a favorite memory on set?
A funny one, certainly, if I may.
Yeah.
On the set of The Hunting Wives, I was put in the featured extra position of Taylor's husband. and Taylor's being played by Ally DeBerry. So in the production, in the Hunting Wives, I just basically I'm the rich old man, Texas oil billionaire, and I have this beautiful 30-year-old wife.
Was this when you were tan?
When I was
Walked
tan?
into set when you were tan?
Oh, I seem to always be tan or have a little.
True. Is there anything that,
So a particular.
yeah, I was going to say, is there anything that has surprised you in your years of doing this that you didn't realize was the case before you got into doing extra work?
Another excellent question. And I probably have to dwell on that a little bit. Probably not so surprised by, but I didn't think the behind the scenes work, for some reason, I don't know why I thought this, wouldn't. I was surprised by how involved it was. Involved not only with the number of people, but the sheer amount of equipment and the time it takes to put 30 seconds on a film.
So maybe a little bit more appreciation. I think we all should maybe have a little bit
Oh,
more
absolutely.
appreciation for movies and what goes into it. And really kind of my last question is for anyone who's watching this, who might think to themselves, I love movies. I'd really maybe enjoy being an extra. What advice would you give to them, either on how to get into it or, I don't know, a mindset on if they are kind of asked to be on set?
Sure. Stay alert to the postings online through social media, just as I did. Again, I'm not a professional in this area, but my personal recommendation would be you don't have to pay a casting agency to become an extra. There are plenty out there that are involved in the business that just compile your data based upon what you send to them. Take the next step, put yourself out there, and I can almost guarantee you'll get called. There are plenty of moments, plenty of shots out there that require hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. Take the step, go do it. You'll have fun.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tom. Actually, before we end this, I have to ask if there is any movie, present or past, that you wish that you could have been an extra in and just witness. Do you have one?
Shawshank Redemption.
Okay. There we go. Maybe they'll make a remake someday and you can be a part of it. Well, thank you so much. That was our episode of Side Hustle. We'll see you next week.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.